What happens when a royal guest walks onto one of the most watched morning shows in the entire country, sits down across from one of the most trusted faces on television, and decides to make the whole thing about himself? It only took 32 seconds. 32 seconds of live television for everything to fall apart. This is the story of the moment. George Stephanopoulos and Prince Harry sat down together on Good Morning America. And trust me when I say this, you are not ready for what came out of that prince's mouth. Not even close. So picture this. It is a beautiful morning. Millions of people all across the country are sitting in their homes, holding their coffee, watching Good Morning America, the way they do every single day. And George Stephanopoulos is there, calm, collected, smiling that smile he always smiles. The man has been doing this for decades. He has sat across from presidents. He has interviewed world leaders. He has handled some of the trickiest, most uncomfortable moments you could ever imagine on live television. Nothing rattles him. Or at least, that is what everyone thought. And then Prince Harry walks out. Now, George is a professional. He welcomes the prince the way he welcomes every single guest. Warm, friendly. He shakes his hand. He thanks him for coming on the show. He gets right into it. Easy. Natural. The way it is supposed to go. George opens things up nice and smooth. He says, "Prince Harry, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us." And right away, before George can even finish settling into the moment, Prince Harry leans forward and says, "Well, I appreciate it too. Although, honestly, I would have thought you would have been a little more prepared for this." George blinks, just for a second. But he recovers. He keeps his smile going. He says, "I am sorry. Can you help me understand what you mean by that?" And Prince Harry, without missing a beat, says, I would have expected a little more, reverence. I am a prince, after all." There it is, right there. That is the moment. That is the thing that changed the entire tone of the interview. And George, to his credit, does not flinch. He does not laugh it off awkwardly. He does not stammer or stumble. He just nods and keeps going, because that is who George is. He does not let a moment like that throw him off. He just absorbs it and keeps moving forward. George says, "Well, absolutely. We are honored to have you here, and we want to make sure we cover everything you want to talk about today." But Prince Harry is not done. He shifts in his seat. He crosses his arms. And he says, Most people who get to sit across from someone like me, they come a little more prepared. They know who they are talking to." Now, at this point, the room is getting quiet. The audience can feel it. The energy has shifted. George Stephanopoulos is sitting there, keeping it all together, the way only someone with his experience can. He has handled tough guests before. He has dealt with people who came on the show with a chip on their shoulder. But there is something different about this. Prince Harry is not just being difficult. He is being entitled, and he is doing it out loud, on live television, in front of millions of people. And still, George does not miss a beat. George takes a breath. He stays calm. He says, "Prince Harry, I want to assure you, we have done our homework. We are really looking forward to this conversation. So let me ask you this." George pauses for just a moment. He looks the prince right in the eye, and he asks, "What is it that you most want the American public to understand about you today?" And you would think that would be enough to steer things back on track. A simple, open question. An invitation to talk about whatever the prince wants to talk about. Most guests, when you give them that kind of opening, they take it. They run with it. They say something meaningful, something personal, something real. But not Prince Harry. He laughs. Actually laughs. And he says, "What I want people to understand is that I should not have to sit here and explain myself to someone who does not even understand who I am." George does not take the bait. He keeps his composure. He keeps his tone even. He says, "With all due respect, that is exactly why we are having this conversation. So the public can get to know you better. And I think that is a wonderful thing." But Prince Harry shakes his head. He points at George and says, "See, that right there. That is the problem. You are treating me like I am just another guest. I am not just another guest." And here is the thing. George could have let it go. He could have moved on. He could have changed the subject and pretended like none of that happened. That is what a lot of hosts would do. They would just smooth it over and keep the interview moving. But George Stephanopoulos is not just any host. He is someone who has earned his seat behind that desk. And on this particular morning, he decides that he is not going to let anyone walk all over him. Not on his show. Not in front of his audience. So George leans forward, just a little, and he says, "Prince Harry, I hear you, and I respect where you are coming from, but I want you to know, every single guest who sits in that chair gets the same treatment. That is what makes this show fair, and that is what makes it work. It is a brilliant move, calm, measured, respectful. He is not attacking the prince. He is not being rude. He is just telling the truth. And the truth is, George treats everyone the same. That is who he is. That is how he has built his career. He has never given someone special treatment just because of who they are or where they come from. And he is certainly not going to start now." Prince Harry sits there for a moment, processing that. You can see him thinking. And then his jaw tightens. Just a little. Like something George said did not sit right with him. Like the idea that he is being treated the same as everybody else is actually bothering him. But Prince Harry does not see it that way. He uncrosses his arms. He leans back in his chair, and he says, "You know what? I think the problem here is that you are not used to someone like me. Someone who actually has something real to say. Someone who is not afraid to speak up." Now, George could let that slide too. He could just nod and move on to the next question. But something about the way Prince Harry says it, and something about the tone, makes George decide to stay right there in the moment. So he says, "Actually, Prince Harry, that is exactly what we love about this show. We love when our guests are not afraid to speak up. That is why we invited you here. So please, go ahead. Say what you have got to say." And for just a second, it looks like things might calm down. Prince Harry pauses. He seems to think about it. Like maybe he is going to take George up on the offer. Like maybe he is going to actually sit down and have a real conversation. But then he does not. Instead, he says, "What I have to say is that I am tired of being told how to sit, how to talk, and how to present myself. And right now, in this chair, I feel like I am being controlled." George looks at him for a moment, steady, patient. And then he says, "Prince Harry, nobody in this room is trying to control you. You are here because you chose to be here. And we are giving you a platform to say whatever is on your mind. That is a gift, and I hope you can see that." That last line lands. You can feel it. The way the air in the room changes. Because George is right. And everyone watching knows he is right. Prince Harry chose to come on this show. Nobody forced him. Nobody made him sit in that chair. He walked in there all by himself. And instead of using the moment, instead of saying something that people could really connect with, he has spent the whole time complaining about how he is being treated. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because after George says that, Prince Harry goes quiet for a few seconds. Just silence. And in those few seconds, the tension in the room just sits there, hanging in the air like smoke. Nobody moves. Nobody breathes too loud. Everyone is just waiting to see what the prince is going to say next. And then Prince Harry speaks again. He says, "You want to know what the real problem is? The real problem is that people like you, people on television, you all think you get to decide who matters and who does not. And I am telling you right now, I matter. I matter a lot." George nods. He actually nods, like he is genuinely considering what the prince is saying. And then he says, "Prince Harry, of course you matter. Everyone matters. But the way this works is, we have a conversation. A real conversation. And right now, I feel like we are not quite there yet. So let me try one more time. Tell me, what made you decide to come on the show today? It is another chance. Another open door." George is giving him every opportunity to turn this around, to have the kind of moment that people will remember for all the right reasons. And once again, Prince Harry has the choice. He can take it. He can walk through that open door and have a real, honest, human conversation. But Prince Harry looks at George and says, "I came here because I was told this would be a safe space. And right now, it does not feel safe." And there it is again. Another claim. Another reason why this is not working. Another way for the prince to put the blame on someone else. George has heard it now. He has heard it several times, and he still has not raised his voice. He still has not gotten cold. He just keeps listening, keeps absorbing, keeps giving the man a way back in. George takes a moment. He takes a slow, careful breath, and he says, "Prince Harry, I want you to know that you are safe here. You have always been safe here. Nobody in this room is your enemy. We are just here to have a conversation, and I genuinely hope we can do that." It is a beautiful response. Sincere, warm, the kind of thing that reminds you exactly why George Stephanopoulos is the way he is. He is not trying to embarrass the prince. He is not trying to make him look bad. He is trying to make this work. He is bending over backwards to give this man every single chance to have a good moment. And you can see that. You can see the effort George is putting in, and it makes the prince's behavior even more frustrating to watch. And Prince Harry just stares at him, and then says, "You know what? I think the problem is bigger than just this room. I think the problem is the entire system, and I do not think anyone here, why including you, has any idea how hard my life actually is." George lets that sit for a second, and then, very gently, he says, "And that is exactly what we want to talk about. Your life, your experience, your story. We want to hear it. So please, share it with us." Now here's the thing that makes this whole moment so powerful. George has now asked Prince Harry multiple times to just talk, to just share, to just open up, and every single time, instead of doing that, the prince has turned it into something else. He has made it about how he is being treated, about how the show is not good enough, about how nobody understands him, and George has just kept going, kept trying, kept being patient, kept offering that hand. And the audience can see it. The millions of people watching at home can see it. They can see exactly what is happening. They can see that George is the one bending over backwards. And they can see that Prince Harry is the one making this difficult. And the more it goes on, the more obvious it becomes. The room settles for just a moment. Like maybe, just maybe, things are going to find their way back to normal. George keeps his face open, keeps his body relaxed. He is ready to go wherever the prince wants to take this. All he needs is for Prince Harry to meet him halfway. Just one time. Just one moment of real, honest conversation. But that moment does not come. So Prince Harry shifts again. He looks around the room, almost like he is checking to see if anyone is on his side. And when he looks back at George, something in his expression changes. It gets harder, more serious. And he says, I am going to be very honest with you right now. I have never felt so disrespected in my entire life. George does not react the way you might expect. He does not look shocked. He does not roll his eyes. He does not get defensive. He just stays right there, right in the moment. And he says, I am sorry you feel that way. That is the last thing I want. And I want you to know, if there is something specific that we can do to make this better for you, we will do it. Prince Harry shakes his head. He says, it is too late for that. You should have thought about that before the interview started. George takes a moment. He takes a slow, careful breath. And he says, Prince Harry, with all the respect in the world, I genuinely do not know what we could have done differently. We have been nothing but welcoming and open. And I hope that you can see that. And then the prince says something that takes the entire direction of this conversation somewhere new. He says, you know what? I think the problem is that you do not know who you are talking to. Do you even know what I have been through? Do you have any idea what it is like to live my life? George looks at him, calm as ever, and says, I do not claim to know exactly what your life is like, but that is why you are here, to help us understand, and we are all ears. Prince Harry lets out a breath, a long one, like he has been holding it for the entire interview, and then he says, fine, you want to know what it is like? It is like being watched every single second of every single day. It is like never being able to go anywhere without someone having an opinion about you. It is exhausting. And for the first time in the entire interview, George smiles. A real smile. Because the prince is finally talking. He is finally opening up. And George sees the opportunity right there in front of him. So he jumps in gently and says, that sounds incredibly difficult. And I think a lot of people can actually relate to that feeling, even if they have not experienced it on the same scale that you have. But Prince Harry does not want the connection. He does not want the common ground. He shakes his head and says, no, no one can relate to this. This is my life. This is unique. No one else on this planet goes through what I go through. George nods thoughtfully. He says, you may be right about that. And I think that is exactly why people want to hear from you. Because your perspective is something that most of us can never truly understand. But Prince Harry is not satisfied. He sits up straighter, and he says, I just feel like if people really cared, they would already know. They would already understand without me having to explain it. George leans in, just slightly, and he says, I think the beauty of a moment like this is that you get to help people understand, even if they did not before, and that is a pretty incredible position to be in. There is a pause, a long one, the kind of pause that feels like it might never end, and the whole room is just sitting there, waiting, because at this point, everyone watching, everyone in that studio, they can all feel that something big is about to happen. Something is about to shift, and nobody knows which direction it is going to go. The air is thick, the tension is real, and George just sits there, steady, patient, waiting for whatever comes next. And then Prince Harry says something that takes the whole room by complete surprise. He says, you know what? I do not think I should have to be the one teaching people. If the world cannot figure out on its own how to treat a prince, then maybe the world has a bigger problem than I thought. And the room goes silent. George sits with that for a moment. He lets it breathe. And then, in the calmest voice you have ever heard, he says, Prince Harry, I think we might be looking at this a little differently. But that is okay. That is what conversation is for. And Prince Harry just stares at him, like he cannot believe what he is hearing. Like he cannot believe that George Stephanopoulos, right there on live television, just gently, politely, respectfully, pushed back. George waits. He gives the prince space. He does not push. He does not fill the silence with more questions. He just sits there, open, ready, giving Prince Harry every single chance to come back to the conversation. Every single chance to say something real. And then the prince does something that nobody was expecting. He stands up. Not all at once. Not dramatically. He just slowly uncrosses his legs, puts his hands on the arms of the chair, and pushes himself up. And he looks down at George, who is still sitting there, still calm, still collected. And he says, "I think we are done here." George looks up at him, and he says, "Prince Harry, we do not have to be done. We have plenty of time. We have a lot of great questions still to ask." But the prince is already moving, as he is already stepping away from the chair, and he says, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "I was told this was going to be a respectful conversation. This has been anything but." George, still sitting right there in his chair, still as steady as he has been the entire time, says, "Prince Harry, I hope you know that we have shown you nothing but respect from the moment you walked through that door." The prince stops. He turns back. He looks at George one more time. And for just a second, you can see something in his face. Something that almost looks like he knows. Like somewhere deep down, he knows that George is right. That this whole thing, from the very beginning, has been handled with nothing but grace and professionalism. But then the moment passes, and Prince Harry turns away and walks right off that set. The room is quiet. Nobody claps. Nobody whispers. The cameras are still rolling, and George Stephanopoulos is still sitting there, in his chair, with his hands folded calmly in his lap, looking right into the camera with that same steady, warm expression he has had the entire time. And then he does the only thing George Stephanopoulos knows how to do. He smiles, and he says, "Well, that was certainly something." And that right there is the moment. That is the moment that millions of people will remember. Not because it was loud, not because it was wild, but because one man sat in that chair and showed the entire country exactly what it looks like to handle something with class. George Stephanopoulos did not raise his voice once. Not one single time. He did not get sarcastic. He did not get cold. He did not get rude. And he just kept being exactly who he has always been. Patient, warm, professional, honest. And Prince Harry, well, Prince Harry showed the world exactly who he is, too. He walked onto one of the biggest stages in American television. He sat across from one of the most respected hosts in the business. He was given chance after chance after chance to have a real, genuine, meaningful conversation. And instead of taking any of those chances, he spent the entire time telling everyone in the room that they were not good enough for him. He called it disrespectful. He called it unsafe. He said nobody understood him. He said the world had a problem if it could not figure out how to treat him. And George just kept offering him a hand, kept trying to pull him back into the conversation, kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. And Prince Harry walked off the set anyway. That is the story. That is what happened on Good Morning America that morning. One man showed up ready to be difficult, and another man showed up ready to be kind. And in the end, the whole world got to see who was who. It was not hard to tell. It was not even close. The contrast between the two of them was clear from start to finish. George Stephanopoulos sat in that chair and held it together the entire time. He did not crack. He did not break. He did not give the prince one single reason to feel disrespected. And when it was over, when Prince Harry had walked off that set, George just kept going. Because that is what professionals do. That is what people with real class do. They do not let someone else's behavior change who they are. And 32 seconds. Remember that? and 32 seconds is how long it took. 32 seconds from the moment Prince Harry sat down to the moment everything shifted. 32 seconds for a royal guest to show the entire country exactly what entitled looks like on live television. And in those same 32 seconds, George Stephanopoulos showed the entire country something else entirely. He showed them what it looks like when a man refuses to lose his cool. He showed them what it looks like when someone with real experience handles chaos with a smile. He showed them that no matter how hard someone pushes, no matter how unfair someone acts, you do not have to come down to their level. You can stay right where you are. You can keep being who you are. And in the end, that is always going to speak louder than anything the other person could ever say. George Stephanopoulos showed them what grace looks like. He showed them that you can be the bigger person, even when someone is making it as hard as possible. Even when they are saying things that do not make sense. Even when they are looking you in the eye and telling you that you are doing everything wrong, when you both know, deep down, that you are not. George showed them grace. Real, honest, quiet grace. And Prince Harry showed them everything else.